But let's get back into football now. So obviously,
loaded shit, bro.
Right. So obviously, you played in the LA Galaxy and stuff. Like, how was it? Obviously, moving from like your boyhood, kind of. I think like we obviously use like, okay, how um, it's like kind of your like Sunday league kind of team. Like, how did you get scouted by LA?
Like, what do you mean Sunday league?
Like, so for us, like we'll play like Sunday league or Saturday league, and then like academies will come and like scout you, and then you'll go to the academy,
okay.
like your equivalent. So how did you get scouted, and what age?
I guess the way mine went was I was about 13 or 14, and I started going to. That's when I went to what's it called? I went to Bayern Munich on trial for like a couple months, and I couldn't deal with like being in Germany, like away from my family, which was like, yeah, it was like it is what it is. Like, this is the type of person I was, and I wasn't ready to be out there. My parents, frankly, didn't really want me out there either. But I went back home, and I was playing for a team called Chivas USA, which used to be in the MLS as well, but got disbanded. And from there, I went to what I was telling you when I first got on, which was the residency program, which was just like the U.S. national team hosting 32 kids or something like that.
Okay.
We're living in like in a place called IMG Academy, but basically we're living in like a living space like for 2 years and just like training together all the time. And every like 6 months they would like cut some guys and like bring new guys in and stuff like that. So I was there for 2 years, and we were basically training to play in the U17 World Cup, which we didn't even end up qualifying for. So throughout that time there, I came out of that 2 years, and I was 16, and I signed with LA Galaxy's Academy. So I was 16 when I signed there, and then I was there for about 6 months, and I think it was like 2 months after my 17th birthday, I signed with the first team. So it was a pretty quick sort of like climb as far as going from, I guess what you would call Sunday league or whatever. So like, the thing was, I guess it's not normal for usually in other countries you would have like a proper academy that you play with prior to that, but the academy system is so different in America because it's obviously years and years behind. But so I was 17 when I signed there, and then the thing that kind of kept me at Galaxy was the fact that they had established the Los Dos, which was playing in the USL, so I knew that I was going to be able to actually have playing time because, I mean, the thing about LA was that they were always signing stars, and even the coach that was there when I first arrived, who was Bruce Arena, he was very, very set on who would play like every single game. He didn't do that like very much, so it was really hard to break into that team. And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know if I would necessarily say that I regret like those steps taken, but I definitely know that there could have been other options that could have proved to be more fruitful. But through that experience, like with LA, I met a countless amount of people who to this day are very, very fond to me, and also people that I learned from that are like, I mean, legends, literally.
How did you feel, like, obviously at a young age, signing your professional contract? Because you were saying, like, it went so quick that it's kind of like, okay, cool, like, I'm here now. Like, there's all these players, like, the coach is set like this. Like, how did you feel, like, initially before anything happened?
I mean, I was geeked, obviously, to be professional. And it was, like, my boyhood club also.
Yeah.
It was really exciting for me. Obviously, football, especially, like, at that time, was perceived differently. Being a footballer is perceived differently.
Yeah.
Just the whole way that a lot of like clubs went about taking care of their players was different. Like, especially their young players. Like, you were kind of just like thrown in there. Like, okay, you're a pro now, and like just do what you do. You know, there wasn't really sort of like solidified mentorship and things like that as far as older players goes, or even coaches, and just like, you know, father footballing figures, which you would expect for like a young player.
So how did you cope then?
I mean, I try to get it how I live, bro. Just like I would ask people like for advice, and I would just like take stuff with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying? Just try to observe people as much as I could, and then go on like that. But I mean, I did learn like here and there, obviously from players like like Robbie Keane and Landon Donovan were probably the most influential when I first arrived, and Jossie Zardes, like who was basically all the guys playing in my positions. But the thing that was most difficult was that I couldn't really relate with anybody because I was like 17 and the closest guy in age was maybe like 23 or something like that.
Yeah.
And we were just weren't on the same wavelength as far as things that I was trying to do. I was still completing the second half of high school. I mean, the second half of my senior year, just like stuff like that. That was kind of like, I don't know. They definitely just treated me like a kid. So
Yeah.
a little bit was they were treating me like a kid in the wrong places, and then treating me like an adult in the wrong places instead of helping me on the field and then kind of letting me do my thing off of the field as far as that goes. But I mean, it's trial and error as far as that type of thing went, because I think that a lot of academies and then first teams are treating their players of youth a lot differently now. They're trying to develop players a lot differently because, I mean, especially for LA Galaxy, there's been a handful, if not more, of talented players who either now don't even play or just were able to just skip away without, them being able to take advantage of those players. I mean, there's so many guys who I know who are now playing in Germany, playing in Holland, playing in Mexico. Just Galaxy could have so many young guys, or even playing in other clubs in the MLS that they just didn't take advantage of because they weren't really interested in taking care of their young players. And I don't need to like bash them, but I'm just saying this is just how the system was going for a lot of MLS teams as far as the development of the league. They were at first trying to get big players and then trying to incorporate, other players from different countries that were younger and had more talent. But when it came to developing their own players that were coming from their cities, it was a little bit like give or take. If it was working out well, they would try to keep it, and if it wasn't working out immediately, it was kind of like, let's see how it plays out, let them play with the second team, and then if it doesn't, they'll just let them go.
Yeah, that's mad. So obviously, like you're young now, you're in the team, and you got like players like Robbie Keane and Landon Donovan. Like, what did they ever like? I guess like put their arm around you, kind of thing, and like help you, like with little stuff and little like let's say like little movement stuff or like do this, kind of do that.
So the thing is, like, when I first arrived, no. As other players they did as I started to get older, but honestly, not as much as I would have thought. Especially with guys like Robbie Keane. Robbie Keane really just kind of yelled at you, and then if you didn't click, then that was it.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of things were compared to how they'd expect maybe like kids in Europe to adapt to it or something like that. It wasn't very, like I said, the mentorship wasn't very accurate and wasn't very present. So for a lot of years, it kind of, for me personally, it made me deter away from trying to look towards them as a mentor because it was either way too intimidating or negative, or it was just kind of like they try to like bash stuff into you instead of like you said, like take your arm around and like show you the ropes and stuff like that. Anything that what's up, Adam? And anything that was I shouldn't say anything, but a lot of the times that I would try to learn things from them, it was just from me, like I said, literally watching them and trying to incorporate those things.
Like, was there any other I guess like you were mentioning those big players of the team, like who else was like around and in your position or any other positions that had like some sort of experience, if you want to say that?
Most of the guys that gave me advice were like not even in my position, to be honest. The only person that really gave me position as a striker was Zlatan.
So
yeah, he was the only one that like took me and like actually like gave me advice and stuff like that. And other than that, I mean, there were a lot of guys who every now and then would talk to me, but another person that was definitely like sit me down and talk to me even outside of sessions, like we go on walks and stuff, was Ashley Cole. Ashley was probably the most influential one for me at Galaxy.
What kind of stuff did he like say to you that will like stick with you, or maybe like help any of the young kids coming up? You know.
Mainly, it was off the field talk. To be honest, it was the fact that he recognized that there was things that I was struggling with as a person when it went to the mental side. That's always been the most difficult thing for me, like as a footballer, just as a young man growing up. Just things in my life that were like transpiring at the same time as trying to become a better footballer.
Yeah.
And not letting those things break you, instead like letting those things kind of make you into who you are, and being able to I don't know, use energy like that may be negative and turn it into something positive, or turn it into drive, or turn it into resolve. But yeah, I guess I would say not letting the outside things really get to you. I mean, I know it's really cliche, but like staying completely focused on your football is actually really hard to do, especially once you feel like you've arrived at a certain place.
No, I feel you.
From time to time, it was hard not to think that I had arrived at a certain place when I was in the same locker room as people who had won this and that and have played in matches like this and that. But at the end of the day, I hadn't done that. And that's where, there was the disconnects, because, you're eating lunch with these guys, you're going to watch with these guys, but you're not the same as these guys at the end of the day. So that's something that Ashley would tell me, like, as, in a polite way, but he'd be like, you're not like us, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Obviously, like, he's saying, like, yeah, I have potential and things like that, and the thing was not to let that basically slip away. I think that a lot of players, when they start to get too close to the goal, or what they think the goal really is, they start to kind of lose sight and they get complacent. And complacency is the same thing as idle time. It's the devil's time. That type of thing really makes you stay in one place. And I think another thing he told me was to literally always have something that you're progressing on.
No, for sure.
Literally every single day.
Yeah, I guess I was watching a few things. I was watching Bruno Fernandes, I think, the new signing for Man United, and he was talking about how like every day there has to be some sort of improvement, even if it's like 1%. Like you need that, and like I was more asking the question about, did anyone have like their arm around and stuff, because when I was younger, like I got into the first team when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously at that time, thinking, well, I'm sure at school, like, goals so close. But like, I was lucky to have like players like around me that kind of. Like,
hey, that's my roommate right there.
Huh?
I said that's my roommate right there.
Oh shoot! I had players like around me, like who were like, you know what, like, yes, you're getting closer, but like chill a little bit. There's still like a lot to do and like a lot to work on, and it's not easy to the eye kind of thing. There's more stuff that goes into it, like you were saying, the mental side and all that stuff. So, like, now you're in the team and stuff, and, like, you get your start. How did that feel?
I mean, that was basically, I don't know, it wasn't as crazy as I thought it would feel. Maybe because I was around it for so long. But at the same time, obviously, it made me feel good because it was something that I had been working towards for a long time. But I thought I did well once I finally broke into the team, and unfortunately, injuries came about, and et cetera, and whatnot happened. But it was definitely like a sweet feeling, especially once you have, like I said, been working towards it for a certain amount of time and you finally achieve it. But I did realize after a while that it wasn't the plateau that I had been like looking for. You know what I'm saying? Like that wasn't where I wanted to be finishing anyway. Yeah. So I think that was the thing that kind of made it feel like, okay, this is sweet, but it's not what I'm looking for, as far as this isn't where I wanted to stop. And it kind of took me to get to that point to be able to realize that I had been idle for a little while.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a wake up for me, as far as like I had been in that situation for so long, and maybe it had been a mix of not being able to, like, I didn't know that I wasn't going to be able to get a chance for so long because of the people who were either ahead of me or in charge of putting me on the field.
Yeah, facts. But like, did it feel any different? Obviously, you started, but did it feel any different when you scored your first goal against like Red Bull?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you start to feel like okay, everything's start to get like in your grasp, and especially once you get your first goal as an attacker, your whole mindset changes because things seem. It's like the goal gets 10 times bigger. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, the confidence levels went up, and not even just cockiness, but just confidence in myself. That was just letting myself know that the other thing that you can't forget is even though you can't be complacent, you have to recognize that your talent got you to. I mean, your talent and your work ethic, just your work had gotten you to a certain place for a reason, and you don't stumble upon those sort of blessings. The work gets put in before those blessings are given to you. So my eyes were open, and that's what I mean. Like it was open to me that the amount of work that I can put in can be tenfold more than this, and that means that the things that I reap from it will be even larger. So that's what I'm working towards now.
No, for sure. But with any career in football, as we know, comes some lows. Like, what have been the lows for you, man?
I mean, I've had a few of those, man.
See, I can't speak on that.
Let's see. I think that the first one, I guess the first one is a good one to start with, which was like my first ever injury, really. I was kind of blessed growing up with not having any real bodily injuries, muscle injuries, or anything like that. And I remember having my first concussion, which was the first of a series of concussions, which has been maybe the most problematic thing in my career as far as the lows go.
How does that happen?
My first concussion, I've had a few, so some of them jumbled together. But the first one, I'm pretty sure it was from a ball, actually. Like, I just got drilled by someone's, like, rocket, and it knocked me the hell out, yeah. And I remember, like, I didn't even recognize my mom when she came to pick me up and stuff like that. Like, I was young enough that I couldn't even drive yet. And I remember my mom came to pick me up, and I didn't recognize her at first, and she obviously flipped out. So that was, like, a scary one, and that one took a little time to recover from. I think it took me about 14 to 20 days or something like that, like, sitting in the dark, like, in the pitch black, no phone, no music, no TV, just, like, eat, sleep, eat, sleep, eat, sleep.
Bro, like, it's crazy. Like, obviously I've been blessed to not have any concussions, but, like, I've heard, like, certain people like talk about and have to do like the same protocols about staying in the dark room. Like how is it? Like what does it do to you? Like,
I mean, like, I'll just let you know, if you thought quarantine was tough to do, try being concussed, because the only thing about it is that all you want to do is sleep. So I mean, your brain is literally rebooting. So imagine what that is like. I think it takes literally 100 days after your brain going through an injury to reset itself. So I would give myself 20 in a pitch black room and then return to play, even though it hadn't truly been recovered. But 20 days was kind of where you can go to feel, asymptomatic. But I mean, the hardest thing about it is staying patient, I guess. I mean, with what I was going through, is the one thing I wanted to do was get back to playing football, and I know I couldn't do it if I was feeling nauseous or dizzy or couldn't see. So I had no choice but to be patient, and I knew that it would be worth it, because obviously after that I'd be able to play football again. And then after that time, I had been recently injured again by another concussion. The only thing that sucks about concussions is that obviously the fact that it's your brain being injured, but that you become more susceptible to concussions from thereafter. From what they know, the other thing is that it's still a field that's it's neurology, so it's a field that's always changing because it's not fully uncovered yet.
Sure.
But the hardest thing about the series of concussions was that I believe it was about a 2-year period that I had like 4 of them, and So that was the thing, is that I was basically getting concussed and coming back and getting concussed and coming back and getting concussed and coming back. And from being, it was kind of like a, part of me was getting used to being injured and would like crave being out. Like the process of being out and recovering was becoming like a, I mean, I'm a habitual person. I play football. Like I wake up, go play football, like recover, wake up, go play football. Like it's like what I do. So like sequences is something that I pick up really easily because I've been doing that my entire life.
Yeah.
But once I got into the sequence of that, it started to become like more natural, and then obviously it was in my head all the time, just like somebody who injures their knee or injures their hamstring or something like that. Every time you're on the field, you're thinking, okay, I hope I don't go out and pull this thing again.
Yeah.
So I'm going out like, okay, I hope I don't freaking mess my brain up again. But I had another injury that was probably one of my lowest points. Was one that I thought was a concussion, but it was in the World Cup in the quarterfinals, or it was the round of 16.
Yeah.
Against Colombia, and I had gotten injured in like maybe the first 2 minutes. I got tackled and I got flipped over, and I landed on my neck and my head, and I had not severed, but I had injured my C-spine, so I was temporarily paralyzed for a couple of hours. And this was in New Zealand, so I was like on the pitch, and all I could remember was just like seeing my teammates like hovering over me, but I couldn't hear anything or anything like that, so I was just like in shock. And then I got taken to the hospital, and they were touching all over me and stuff, and I was just, I was just like a potato.
What was running through your mind at that time? What was running through your mind at that time?
That I'm paralyzed, dude. Like I couldn't even. I don't know. I can't even. I can mimic that feeling. That feeling is probably the closest I've felt. The only time I've felt like more scared for my life was the 1 or 2 times that I've come close to losing my life, and like that was the thing that was going through my mind the most, was that I wouldn't be able to play football again.
Yeah.
So that is mainly the reason why I continued to keep playing, was because I knew that if I loved it that much, that the only thing I was thinking about was that I couldn't play anymore, meant that it had to be something that I was, truly in love with. But the thing was, I ended up suffering what they call a stinger in football, which is usually it only lasts for about a couple minutes or sometimes seconds. But I guess in my case, it lasted for a couple hours. But after a couple hours, my feeling in my legs started to come back, and I was able to move my toes and stuff. And that was the most euphoric feeling I ever had in my life. And the craziest thing was, my mom and my 2 younger brothers had flown out to New Zealand, and that was the first game that they were able to see in person. So this was the first game. They just landed like the day before, and the first 2 minutes they see me go out there and get paralyzed. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so obviously my mom was just like going through it, and she was like hoping that I wasn't like a vegetable, but I came out of that, so wouldn't be the craziest thing in my life. But
like, at least, obviously situation being bad, but at least like your mom was there, because the last
it could have been a lot of fun
for her to be in America, wondering and hearing, because I know how my mom was. It's not the same, obviously, but when I done my Achilles, my mom was bugging out, and I know she's watching this right now. But like, and the thing is, like, it's funny because I remember I obviously done my ACL like years ago when I was younger, and I was thinking, you know what, like, I've been through like a long-term injury, like I'll be fine in it. But the thing with each injury, like, it's never the same.
Never the same. And even with concussion, there were always head injuries, and some people would look at me and they'd be like, dude, like, it's the same thing, like 10 days you're good. And I was like, dude, one time I got a head injury and I threw up immediately for like 5 days straight. The next day I couldn't look at light. I mean, the next injury I couldn't look at light. The next one I couldn't hear loud noises, but light was fine, and I wasn't nauseous. And actually, I had to eat like a whole bunch of food. Like one of them I couldn't eat food at all. The other one I would eat for like 5 people every day. And it's just like I said, I mean, it's your brain, so you don't even use all of it. So I mean, when you're injuring it, you don't even know what you're injuring. So who knows what it's gonna crave for after that? But yeah, I mean, long-term injuries. I don't think any injury, just period, is the same for any single person.
Yeah, I feel you. So obviously, running it back to the good times, like, how did you get called up by the national team?
That came after. I mean, obviously, I was already in the pool from like the U17 cycle, but I had a good season with the first team, and then I kind of transitioned just into our World Cup qualifiers, and I did well at the qualifiers, and had a couple important goals, like even the qualifying goal for us to get into the World Cup. So it was kind of just a good year all around as far as with club and country. It was yeah. I mean, it was the same year that I got my first goal for Galaxy as well. So it was kind of just like I wouldn't say no brainer, but it just all manifested itself. It moved very smoothly.
Yeah. Did you have a different feeling to when you made your debut and you scored your goal for Galaxy compared to when you done the same thing for the US national team?
You know what? I never really thought about that, but I was much more nervous with Galaxy actually. Yeah, I was much more nervous with Galaxy. I think it was because with the national team, I was amongst my peers. It felt like I was much more amongst my peers. So it was like I'm doing this with my bros, et cetera, et cetera. Guys, you kind of, even though you see your teammates every day, I think any person that says that has had national team experience will say that being with your national team is like a much more solidified brotherhood than, like, I mean, I guess it also depends on your club. Like, depending on where I was in my career and with my club, if I was an older guy, I'd probably be saying something completely different. Because, I was a 17-year-old, like, talking to 30-year-olds. Like, I went home to my dog and homework, and they went home to their daughters and their sons and their wives. And so it was it's just different. It was different. So with the national team, I was with my bros. Like, we were all chatting like about the same things. We have similar perspectives on stuff. And we're going through the same things in life, so it's much more relatable. So you're kind of grinding in the same sort of mind state as they are. But my goals with the national team always felt like, amazing. I don't know. They both were very fruitful in their own ways, their own respective ways. So I don't really have a comparative thought about that. They both like hold special places in my heart, and I mean they both have highs and lows. So
no, for sure. You know what? Yeah, this is one thing. I think I was talking to Josh about it. Josh Yarrow. Like, one thing that's always confusing to me is like how like the MLS is set up and how like is it the MLS owns the players.
Yeah.
But what do the teams do? So like
the MLS is one single entity and it owns all the teams, and so basically you're all players that sign to Major League Soccer, and then you're essentially designated to the team that you play for.
Okay.
Just like there was a guy, named Trey, and I forgot his last name, but he was a goalkeeper, and he was an MLS pool goalkeeper, which meant he was signed to the league, he got a salary from the league, and he would be a third-tier keeper for whatever team needed a keeper. Say, like, one day, but he would have one team that he would respectively train with at all times, which was, at that time, Galaxy, right? So I remember one time, Sporting Kansas City had a red card for both their goalkeepers. Or, like, one was injured, one had a red card, so they needed a keeper. So he went to Kansas City and played for them that weekend and then came back. And then was just at training on Saturday. So, like, yeah. Because every player is owned by the league. You get paid by the league. You don't get, your salaries don't come from, like, my salary, Galaxy has never paid me a penny. It's always come from MLS. All I've done is represent Galaxy via the MLS.
Bro, that is so confusing.
Yeah, it's a very tricky system, and that's how they get a lot of players and people like contractually and the whole thing with like the free agency thing. Like you have to have a certain amount of years of service to the league and have to be a certain age. I don't even think I played there for like 6 years, and I'm 23. I don't even think I could be a free agent in the MLS.
What do you mean you can't be? What?
Yeah, I think it has to be like 20, 24, and when I left the MLS, I think it was 24 and 6 or something like that. Like it was madness. Like it was crazy.
Okay, so if you're contracted to the what is a waste man? If you're contracted to the MLS, yeah, and like their contracts are this, then if you get a contract offer from Galaxy, let's say for instance, and they say this the stipulation is how much you're getting paid, bonuses, da 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 da. Do those bonuses have to be? Does all of that have to be approved by the MLS, or does it have to be approved by Galaxy?
I mean, it's all like it's that's like one entity basically. So yeah, it's all being approved by MLS and Galaxy. All my bonuses, the only thing that would change would basically be like your end of the year pot. So every win that you get $600 as a team for a win, and 4 for a draw, none for a loss, whatever. Just I'm making up numbers, right? So you get win. At the end of the year, your team would decipher how that money got distributed. So like the year that we won the championship, we got a whole bunch of money because we won the championship, right?
Yeah.
So our captain was like, okay, the starting 11 gets this much money. The bench players get this much money. The reserves that didn't really do anything get this much money. Like, yeah.
Bro, what?
We basically didn't get any bonuses at the end of the year besides their personal contractual bonuses, which would have been for the starts, the playing time, the goals, etc., etc. So if you have none of those, you're not getting any bonuses from the league. So, yeah. And there aren't really, like, bonuses for, like, I mean, we don't play in stuff like Champions League and things like that, so there's not, like, big bonuses that you're getting outside of that.
Hold on, so you said your captain. Why is the captain distributing? Bro, you're lying, right?
Things could be different today. Things can be different today, but this is like throughout basically almost my entire career there.
Bro. No, that's crazy.
I mean, the salary is different. You still get your regular salary. Like, your salary is normal. You're still getting your regular salary. Like, I mean, that doesn't change. That doesn't get touched by anybody else. But the only thing about the salary is that it comes from Major League Soccer. Like, your checks say Major League Soccer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, obviously when I was at college and I finished college, I was going through, like, the draft process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that, like, there's some kids that will get drafted, like, out of, like, the draft. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say it's a homegrown player. So there was hella of them, like, the time I went in it.
Yeah.
So, like, do all homegrown players get, like, a certain amount?
Okay, so here's the other thing about MLS. Is that every single team is broken up into categorized players or categorized assets. So you have starting players, you have DPs, who are the top tier. You have, like, basically, I forget the actual name, but I'll just categorize it as far as, like, the way that they're used. So there's, like, DPs who are basically the star players. Yeah. Then you have, like, the starters or, like, regular players. Then you have, like, reserve players who are basically, like, the players who don't get paid a significant amount of the salary. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's how it's broken up into those sections. As far as, like, you can allocate a certain amount of money to a certain amount of section of players, and you have to have certain players in certain sections.
Oh, serious?
You have to have a certain amount of players in certain sections. Like, you can't have too many of one. Like, you can have, like, 3 DP players, like some, like, 16 of the regulars, and then, like, the rest have to be reserved, and then there's, it's, like, broken up.
So then
I mean, he's talking about, I mean, like, the difference about TAM and GAM was basically like money that's used. I think that's like money given like straight from like the MLS and then your actual like salary cap.
What's that? TAM, right?
Yeah.
Shit.
Because there's two different. Because in the MLS, there's two different sources of not income, but of money that you can use for players, and that's TAM and GAM.
Yeah.
And like even I'm sure as you've seen, players can be moved for other things as well, which can be draft picks, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you think, that okay, my opinion is that as long as like stuff is structured that way, I don't think the MLS are gonna move forward. What do you think? This guy had to drink his water before he answered.
What professional league do you know that is structured this way that actually works like that? Even the NBA had to have like a lockout for them to gain certain rights as players in order to move freely throughout the league. And I mean, they're just I just think that there's too much power that is within the actual system, the structure of the MLS rather than the players to just move freely or to even, get what they're worth, per se. And, I mean, I know guys like were in Galaxy who one day literally figured out that they were getting moved across the country, like, for a draft pick. And, like, bro, that's trash. So I don't think that it can move forward that way, at least not significantly, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. But, for a lot of people it benefits, and for a lot of people it doesn't. So it'll stay this way for as long as it can until those people yield, and then the benefit will switch hands to the players, and that's when you'll see an influx of not just older guys going to retire there or younger guys that are getting a DP slot, but you'll see kind of a much bigger balance and maybe even players going in and out of the league on a much more regular basis.
Yeah, that's always been like tricky to me. Like, okay, obviously salaries in America compared to let's say like a league in England or something. Like how would you compare like that?
Well, that's the thing, because these are not individually, like they do have owners, but they can't really be individually financed like they can in Europe. You can have a billionaire own a club and he can just be like, yo, I'm going to just put my money towards the club, and then you can change the entire club. It's different than in America. So, I mean, if you want to like literally talk about numbers, at an average entry player, probably today it's probably gone up, but I think the minimum a player has to be paid today is something along the lines of like $65,000.
Yeah, no, I remember that,
which is generally a large percentage of players between the age of 17 and maybe 23.
I think that's better because the digits I was seeing before were kind of mad, honestly.
Oh, well, it's changed. Like I said, it'll change and it'll continue to change. But it was, especially when I started, I was fortunate for what I was receiving. But I knew people who were even older than me that were receiving less than $50,000 as a professional athlete and had families.
So okay, let's say if that player was older than you, like was there ever an instance where they were playing more than you?
Yeah, for sure. There were plenty of people who were making less than me that were playing more than me.
That's mad.
And like playing significant minutes. Like there's a guy I have in mind who gave significant minutes to the club and efforts to the club, and even till this day I feel like he was done wrong as far as the way he was let go, the way he was compensated, etc., etc.
Yeah. Damn. So obviously now we're moving on. You're in Denmark now. Why Denmark? Why the transition from LA to Denmark?
You know what? Denmark happened to be a good league that I could filter in from United States into a bigger European league. I think it's a good league as far as transitioning goes. And in my circumstance, it was, one of the most positive places I could go to, a place that I could grow to, as well as not being too demanding as far as like me coming back from having surgery on my adductor and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also not being able to showcase the way I would want to showcase having been injured. I mean, as an athlete, how hard it is in general to be able to get good looks when you're literally injured at the moment. So, the thing about the jump to Europe is that I wanted it to happen much earlier, but through things that I can't speak about as far as contractually and just, going head to head with both Galaxy and the league, I was not able to go because, like I said, you don't have free agency. And the other thing about that whole instance that even other players have gone through is that when you have a contract that has a certain amount of years on it and you want to leave before that, you have to go through hoops. So even if Galaxy were to say that I could go to a place, the league could deny that.
Really? Oh, shoot.
Because they're essentially selling me as well. Because who do I work for? I work for the MLS.
Yeah.
So there was just, like I said, multiple hoops that had to be jumped through, and I wasn't able to jump through them all. And push came to shove, I ended up in San Antonio, and I'm sure I told you plenty of times, basically waiting out what was my contract, like the end of my contract. And I was like, this is the last 6 months of my contract, and then I'll be a free man. And that's the only time you're basically free without meeting the certain criteria of the age and years served in the league is when you're out of contract, which most players, when they don't have an option, will have to enter a re-entry draft and then be able to continue being the MLS, and you'll just be allocated to a different team. But I just left the league altogether.
No, for sure. How do you feel about the move? And did you have any offers that you would have rather gone to, or you feel this is the best one?
In the past, yes. At the moment, I felt pretty confident in what I had seen this team do as far as, like I said, filtering players, like players that had sold to other clubs and stuff like that, and even the league in general, as far as Denmark goes. And but yeah, in the past, there's definitely like teams in Spain, Belgium, and France that were very tantalizing, basically. But like I said, there's a lot of things that you would have to kind of go through to get to those places when leaving from America. And it was just kind of an obstacle that was hard to get through, because at the end of the day, you would also have to bring in that club and make them go through hoops as well, as far as maybe paying an amount that they wouldn't want to pay normally, because they have to really, make it seem like this is something that they can't turn down.
Yeah.
If I was coming from another European side, or even just another